Welcome to the Good Success Podcast. We have an amazing show scheduled for you today, but before we get started, let's have a word from our sponsors. Radius Renovation Group is a full-service construction management solution for investors of single-family and small multifamily investors in 25 states. Whether you own one property or hundreds in different states, the goal is to be your one-stop shop for all your construction needs, to increase property values, and to give you a positive and profitable outcome. Using their 8-step process, Radius will walk the project, complete a line-by-line scope of work and estimate, schedule work with licensed and Radius certified contractors, manage the project and contractors, pay the contractors as work is completed, provide quality control throughout the project, and when the project is complete, do a final inspection. Clients are provided with login access to Radius's cloud-based project management platform to view work schedules and updated photos of each job. There is even the ability to directly message the project manager. Radius only works with real estate investors, so they speak your language and understand your needs, from project timing to investor-friendly pricing. If you're an investor who is done trying to manage contractors and rehabs on your own, it might be time to consider having Radius as your partner. To put their expertise to work for you today, visit the Radius website at www.radiusreno.com or call them right now at 417-730-9777. And now, back to the Good Success Podcast.
Am I bringing value to my clientele base? Am I growing along with am I seeing the development in myself and the development in my clients as well? Am I able to help push them forward? When we talk about success on the business end, am I accomplishing that? On a personal end, am I keeping my priorities where they need to be? Am I developing my family?
Welcome back to the Good Success Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Culler. Got Tom Olson sitting to my right this time. I think this is the first time that you're on my right.
Yep, over here.
You're on my right.
Where in the world is Tom?
Did we just switch places?
I think so.
We
I'm not
did.
sure.
Awesome. Well,
the whole studio is kind of screwed up today.
Yeah, but it's because we have somebody in the house today. In the house, and that is the infamous Josh Belk.
Infamous.
The famous Josh Belk. Okay. The famous Josh
Belk.
You
put the N in front of it. I'm
no,
not quite sure
I
what
accidentally
exactly
did
means.
that. It was just the famous Josh Belk.
Okay.
So we're excited to have Josh Belk. Josh, you came in the office. What's going on?
Oh, beautiful outside. Spring has finally arrived. So,
Kinda.
Hopefully. Yeah. So excited about that. I just got off of a wonderful Resurrection Day weekend, and I think for probably many of us listeners, and I know for Tom and Josh, being at our local assemblies and getting to enjoy that time of the year, and it's kind of a refreshing time, a good time of the year to kind of hit a reset button, and both in life and in business, and kind of enjoy the summer months that are ahead of us.
Yeah.
Well, especially for Josh, because he just got through with tax season.
So. That's right.
Yeah, that process never seemed to end. But
it's like the resurrection for him is like, okay, I can actually sleep for a night.
You can breathe. Yeah, exactly. So, man, it's awesome to have you on the show today. We're excited. If you guys don't know already, Josh has his own podcast called Belk on Business. So that's, I believe, on all podcast platforms. So just go over to wherever you're at, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, anything else, and just search Belk on Business. You'll see a bright red, his favorite color of his branding there. And
is that from Indiana University?
I knew you were going to go there.
I'll just say, go there.
I was thinking like Boiler Up. I mean, what in the world
Boiler
is
Up?
red?
And,
come on, Josh.
So Indiana, I don't even know. Jeez. They still even have a basketball program anymore. I
haven't. A lot of listeners that are Indiana fans here, so
I think it's been like 6
years. I think they're going to like your colors, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I was thinking Boiler Up here, Josh.
Yeah, well, it's been like 6 or 7 years since they've been in the tournament or something. So I think it's been like 10 years since they've actually beat Purdue in a basketball game. So. Yeah, but Boiler Up.
Yeah, it's Boiler Up. There it is. Awesome. So Josh is a accountant and an incredible one, and very much focused in the real estate industry. So you guys will get to hear a little bit about that today. He's also a part of the Good Success Mastermind and has been there since our second meeting.
Correct.
So that's awesome. Yeah. And what do you think about the mastermind? Good?
Absolutely tremendous. Brings a ton of value, and it's primarily real estate investors that are in the mastermind. But there are some of us, and I think it's even growing more so, where you have non-real estate investors in the room, and everybody just brings a ton of value. We're all able to help each other in our areas of businesses. We all have strengths and weaknesses in our respective businesses, and it seems like every area that there's some weakness in, there's always somebody in the room that's their strength, and they're able to kind of help you through some of those issues. And then beyond that, I think the beauty of the mastermind is the accountability factor as well. So we're able to get on a call once a month, or maybe through the Facebook page, and able to kind of help each other, hold each other accountable, and which is, I think probably maybe the greatest beauty of the Good Success Mastermind is the accountability factor, knowing that within now, it's going to be within just a few weeks, we're going to be back in the room together in Miami. And I still need to book my hotel. I saw you post that here just a little bit. So if you're in the mastermind, you haven't booked your hotel yet, you got to get that done.
So we've already come up with our first block has already been done. So we already had to reserve more rooms. So
yeah, I saw that. I'm watching your little blurb on Facebook on the way over, and it was kind of a reminder, hey, I need to take care of this. I haven't booked any of it yet, but looking forward to it. But the accountability factor. And I think for all of us in our businesses, in our lives, we need accountability. We need that multitude of counselors, and in many ways we can get that multitude of counselors within that mastermind room. And the Good Success Mastermind gotten not only just that accountability end, but also a lot of just dear friends have come from that group. Yeah. And overall, it's just a wonderful opportunity. I count it. I'm humbled and privileged to be able to be a small part of that group. And if you're watching this, and I think maybe something you ought to consider if you're not in the mastermind already.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Josh, if you guys are curious about like the actual people in the room, Josh is a quintessential person that is a part of the Good Success Mastermind, just the way he carries himself, the integrity, personality, and all that. And so just great down-to-earth people that are incredible business owners and incredible entrepreneurs. So make sure you go check it out. We'll talk about that in just a second. But Josh has also been a part of 2 other Good Success podcast episodes. I don't have the exact numbers, but if you go and download the app, all you got to do is search Josh Belk when you have the official Good Success app. Just search Josh Belk, and then his 2 episodes will pull up. And so Tom's pulling it up right now. But
well, the best part,
it's gonna be good.
The best part of the podcast is they don't have to look at our ugly mugs. They can just listen.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Our radio faces, right?
We have faces for radio.
We're going to start calling it podcast faces.
There we go.
That makes more sense because it's a podcast, not a radio.
There you go.
But yeah, anyway, so Tom's going to look up the episode number. But if you guys haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the Good Success Podcast. We're on all podcast platforms. Just search Good Success and you'll find us. And then, like I mentioned, as Tom's going through the app right now,
Josh, the problem is there's so many podcasts in here.
There's a ton of podcasts.
There's so much value just sitting in here. Oh my word! Like you could pretty much probably teach yourself how to have a business if you just went through this.
If you did. So make it happen.
Crazy.
So just go to either your Apple App Store or the Google Play Store for Android and search Good Success. You'll find the official app there. Make sure you download it, and then send us a review if we're on Apple Podcasts. We would love to hear your thoughts. 5 stars would be absolutely amazing. And then the Good Success Mastermind, I believe by the time that this airs, actually, it's going to be all done. It's going to be over. So maybe even close to it. But the Miami Mastermind is going to be awesome. And you'll be there.
I will be there.
Tom will be there.
Yep.
And it's going to be amazing. Tell us about the next event that's going to be coming up then.
So the next event is going to be August. I believe the dates are 5 through 9. So August 5 through 9 right here, about 7 minutes from where this studio is right now in Maryville, Indiana. So if you're thinking about what airport you would fly into, I highly recommend Midway Airport out of Chicago, but you can also fly into O'Hare. O'Hare is just a little bit farther away from our office. So Chicago, Illinois is pretty much where you'd fly into, but Maryville, Indiana is where it'll be held. Right up the street here, 5, 6, and 7, or 7, 8, and 9. That's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We have 2 groups, and we kind of all get together in that middle day. And just kind of like Josh was saying, a lot of people in the mastermind have created their top 5s or their top people that they need to talk to when they have an issue. And I know Josh is probably one of those top 5 for some people in that mastermind. I mean, he's even one of my top 5 when it comes to certain parts of my business. So if you're looking for a group that has that kind of caliber of people that can actually become that higher tier of people, that fewer better, I highly recommend the Good Success Mastermind. The other thing too, Josh actually just mentioned this about accountability. And if you like the accountability piece, Josh, we're actually going to be putting that on steroids in this next event.
Cool.
So there's going to be a little bit more emphasis on that, and a little bit more emphasis even on making the mastermind members actually kind of fill out forms and kind of help them all collectively work together on our purpose and also our profitability, and trying to push people and push that needle. A lot of times people in business think they go to a mastermind, right? And they get all these ideas and they think, okay, that's the one I want to do. But they don't really sit back and look at it and figure out which one's really going to move the needle the most, which one really is going to make a bigger difference. And sometimes we think the decisions that we're going to make are these big, huge, awesome decisions. But sometimes, like, if you actually look at it on paper, you realize, oh, that wasn't really the biggest, best decision for me. It might be a good decision. It's just not going to move the needle the most. So that's kind of what we're focusing on this next mastermind, and we're implementing some new upgrade membership options for people, and giving people even more, even the possibility of writing their own book is another piece that we're doing with the mastermind. So it's pretty exciting where we're at right now, where we're going, and I'm super excited about the mastermind.
Yeah, and if you guys want to check it out, make sure you go to goodsuccess.com/mastermind, learn more about it, and then also you could see the event details for the next couple events for the rest of the year. And make sure you do that. Fill out the application. You'll talk to Tom, and we'll vet you that way. So that'll be fun. And then the Community Go-Giver event, again, coming up super fast, June 26, 27, 28. It's going to be happening right here in the office, so right outside the studio here where we are recording in Gary, Indiana. So, Tom, tell us about the Community Go-Giver event, what people can expect.
Yeah, we actually had 7 more seats signed up last week. So I would keep that. I have another message. So this is going to go out in podcast form. But if you are going to the Community Go-Giver event, we also have an issue with hotel space. So we've also already booked our original hotel space, and we're already getting more hotel space. So it's in the middle of June, like almost July. And I'm just going to tell you, if you don't book soon, you may not have a place to stay. So I really highly recommend that. We're not offering the Airbnb option, as all my Airbnbs are already actually full for those weeks, and they were filled before Christmas time even. So I didn't even, when I went to go and grab them for the event, it didn't work out this year. So there might be some other Airbnbs available, but I highly recommend you book your hotel for that as well.
Yeah, so communitygogiver.com is where you can sign up for that. It's going to sell out at 80 tickets. We can't take any more in this office, so make sure you take advantage of it while the tickets last. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the podcast interview for today. We got Josh Belk on the line here. Actually, not on the line. He's in the house. So we're excited about yeah, he's on the phone. Yeah, he'll jump on that phone call.
All right.
We'll do it this way. So we're excited to have you on. The main topic for today is going to be this whole thing about the fractional CFO. And I know that you did a short episode about it on your podcast, which people could kind of go and get a little bit of a high-level view. I know you wanted to keep it more high-level. You mentioned it on that episode. So first of all, before we get into that, do us a favor for the people that have not heard the other podcasts that we've had you on. Introduce yourself, so who you are, what you do, how long you've been doing all that.
Sure. I'm Josh Belk. The company I own, one of quite a few companies, but my primary company that I own is Belk & Associates. We're an accounting firm out of St. John, Indiana, and basically do pretty much what accounting firms typically do, but we like to do it in a little bit more of a fun way. And so I'm big on, and really with the help of both of you, really trying to get content out there, try to get value beyond just the compliance piece, which is kind of boring. And even for myself, that kind of hold that finance piece is kind of boring. That's why I have staff that's kind of what they geek out on, is kind of the boring component of it. And I like doing the fun part of it, which is working with our clients, really try to be more forward looking, and try to find out where our clients are at, where they want to go, and then try to help them, at least in our area, to try to help them to get to where they want to be. So have an accounting firm, and as you mentioned earlier, I think both of you did, as far as our primary focus, primary niche of our firm is our clients that are in real estate in some form or fashion. So kind of really try to do the best we can to hammer down both the tax rules as they relate to that industry, and then also kind of understanding exactly where they're at. I'm in a couple different masterminds with primarily real estate investors to try and understand where they're at, or the struggles that they have, and then kind of in a way for me to be able to bring value to them, to be able to so they can take the next step forward. So. But anyway, yeah, so we're in St. John, Indiana here, right in Northwest Indiana, which is beautiful this time of the year. So Community Go-Giver events is another value to come to that time of the year, get to enjoy. Really was the prettiest months here, June, July, that time of the year. So But let's hop into this thing and
So one thing that I want to kind of just kind of skim over real quick. You don't have to go super deep if you don't want to.
Yeah.
Maybe if you got some really good tips on this. But tax season is over for last year, so now we're going into a new year. And for the people that are listening, what are some tips? Because last time, actually the time before we had you on, we talked a little bit about what to look for in taxes and everything. So going into this year, are there any updates, anything that people need to be aware of for the 2019 tax season? It'll come around again next year, but kind of being proactive and preparing for that for this year.
Well, not much has changed. One area that we just got received more directives on this recently is in regard to the opportunity zones, and we spent some time. I think we actually did a podcast on that. So if you are a real estate investor looking to invest in those areas, you probably want to get a hold of your accountant and have a conversation with them, and really kind of dig into those new rules, the clarity that was received on the rules, and make sure that you're structured properly. Beyond that, not much else has changed for 2019, but really you should be kind of taking a look at what you're doing as it relates especially to the QBI deduction, qualified business income deduction, to make sure that you're structured in a way. I'm finding even this last week, speaking in a room of real estate investors, that they weren't even aware of some of the strategies as it relates to that particular deduction. Because real estate generally is passive income, especially if you're investing in rentals, regardless of commercial, residential, which you can disqualify yourself from that deduction if you're not structured in the proper way. So, especially as it relates to self-management of the properties, if you're using a property manager, and so make sure that your accountant's up to speed on those rules. Make sure you're structured in a way that you can take advantage of those rules. Because we saw for some of our clients that particular deduction was saving them $70, $80, almost $100,000 a year on their tax returns. And so it's something that you really want to make sure you have a handle on, especially if you have rentals, regardless in what realm that you're structured in a way that you can take full advantage of that deduction.
Sure, absolutely. So let's talk about this fractional CFO thing. The first time that I believe maybe we heard it, and then at the Good Success Mastermind in February in Dallas, you talked about this a little bit. So kind of dive deep into what the fractional CFO is, what the concept is, and maybe how it can benefit people that are listening. Don't be afraid to go deep into the subject and kind of take the spotlight on that. So that's what we got you on for. So. Well,
you think of, why do you get into a business, right? You don't get into business for the financial piece of it. Now, some people get into business for the financial benefit of it. So they want to, whatever that net income is, they may have something they're trying to do with that. Okay, so it may be, to build a legacy. It may be to simply just to fulfill their bucket list. And we had a client, they wanted to buy a sports car. That was something that was on their bucket list. So they wanted to make money in order to achieve that. But you don't get into business necessarily for those things. Generally get into business because you have a passion, usually for one of three areas. Usually you have a passion for product. You have some people out there that they have a product they want to take to market. Some people they have a passion for people, so they have a service, and others it's just a passion for a process, and so they may have some sort of a process, some sort of a help there that they want to try to monetize on, and so and most people that's kind of the weakest area of their business is that of the finances, and it's usually kind of the greatest area of misunderstanding in a business is that of finances. So a lot of times, most businesses, they'll hire a bookkeeper. So you kind of have, or a controller, somebody internally that's kind of handling the transactional side of the business. And so they're handling the day-to-day. So they're the ones that are doing the data click, paying bills, contact with your vendors, that type of thing. So they're overseeing your books, whether you're on Excel, using spreadsheets, or you're using QuickBooks online or something to that effect, or using some sort of a platform to be able to kind of manage the bookkeeping end of it. If you're in real estate, you may be using like Buildium or Appfolio, one of those platforms as far as if you're doing property management or if you have rentals, for example. And so you have individuals that are kind of doing that day by day transactional piece of it. And so they're more focused on that process, and they aren't necessarily able to, and most of the time not able to take that information and be able to meet with the leadership in the company, with the visionary, and be able to bring them many times the value that they need to be able to push their business forward. So they come in and they've done their job. They paid the bills and they put things in the right bucket. Okay, and so they come in with this P&L. Hey, according to the transactional end, we made X amount this month. Okay, which is all fine and good. So you have that piece of it, and then most businesses have an accountant. So they have that person on the outside, and they're more concerned about the historical, the compliance piece. So, hey, we got your tax return done. And I've never walked into an office with the tax return, put it on the table, and the person just absolutely just fired up that they got that tax return. Okay, they may be happy that they're receiving a refund or whatever the case may be. Most of our clients end up owing because they're business owners, and they're not, that's something to be managed. But they're not there. We're not a business that's sitting there, filing W-2 returns, with people just that type of income. So most of our clients owe, so that's not really a value component, is the tax return itself. But you have that outside account. A lot of times that's just what they do. They're providing, once again, it's just a transactional type of a function for them. So they're providing a tax return. They're providing audited financial statements. They may be talking with your banker, making sure they understand the numbers, that type of thing. But there's really not a whole lot of kind of overall additional value that's brought there, as far as really from an accountant, which is kind of more of an integrator type role. Okay, they're not usually bringing kind of that visionary type component to their clients. So, and most of your smaller businesses don't have a CFO on site. Now, some smaller businesses may call somebody on their leadership team their CFO, but generally they're more like a controller or even a bookkeeper. So they'll come into your weekly meetings or whatever with reports, and maybe they'll have a little bit of insight, but they're not really providing that forward-looking helps that the visionary generally needs. So what'll happen is, between the businesses that can hire a full-time CFO, okay, that actually does provide this component, and maybe even for some of those businesses that do, but most businesses that just have a bookkeeper on site, many times what they'll find value in bringing somebody in from the outside. And so there's a term for that. It's called a fractional CFO. I've heard it called other things as well. But they'll bring a fractional CFO into the business. And it does a couple different things. First of all, it provides a different insight into the business. So many times when you're involved in the day-to-day and the transactional end, you kind of just feel overwhelmed by the day-to-day. And so, Tom, you're a visionary in your companies. And so you kind of many times, as even I do in my business, I kind of get caught, even though I provide the service, I still get caught many times in the day-to-day in my own business. And just you and I last night were texting, or yesterday afternoon we're texting a little bit. And so, kind of, hey, this is something going on in my business. And Tom was able to provide for me a kind of a fresh insight, a kind of an outside person's perspective, and saying, hey, you know what, this is something you didn't want anyway. In this particular, in the context of the conversation, not going to dig into that, but and he was spot on. So I'm kind of caught up into the emotion of what's going on, but here was somebody, Tom in this case, was able to come in from the outside and kind of remove that emotional component to it and say, hey, these are things you truly need to be thinking about. And he brought a tremendous amount of help and encouragement to me through that. So the fractional CFO will come in and kind of provide a little bit of that perspective and say, hey, you know what, I know you kind of like really are, you're emotional in this, but hey, you really need to kind of take a look at maybe the numbers. Does this truly align with your core values? Does this truly align with your vision plan, where you're trying to go? And so you kind of have that outsider's perspective that can come into a business from the financial end. Beyond that, they're able to really kind of help you kind of identify, clean up your not only your structure. So many times fractional CFOs will come in and will kind of help you with the technology piece, or at least provide you that direction. We have a client we met with yesterday, for example, came into my office and they were saying, you know what, we need help beyond just the transactional end, and said, okay, what's going on in the business? And we pulled up, and I the very first thing I looked at him and said, you know what, your financial statements are so complex. You have so many lines on there that you look at it, you have no idea what's going on. And so for somebody to be able to come in and and what we're going to do for them, we're going to clean that thing up. And so we're going to take a P&L, for example, that has 30, 40, 50 lines on it, and let's truncate this thing down to where you're just kind of looking at kind of your major. Now you can always get the detail below it, but to where you can actually look at it and it's something that you can actually use. And then beyond that, and where another value that a fractional CFO can bring is to help bring a visual component to it as well. Because most of the time, visionaries in a business, they'll look at a P&L and all they see is numbers. And they don't. Okay, I see I made money, but what is this thing telling me? And so to be able to come in and say, okay, let's take what the information that's there and let's create a visual component to it, and to be able to provide interpretation. And for many times, I know for all of us, we've gone into a room and we hear somebody speak. Oh, that sounds really great. That sounds really interesting, but I have no idea what to do with what I just heard. And so a fractional CFO can come in and say, okay, well, here's the data. Okay, now, well, here's the raw data. Now what? And so we end up having that conversation. Okay, where are you wanting to go? And then what things need to be measured? And so kind of looking at, okay, there may be things you think that need to be measured, but are they truly the things that you should be measuring? And then if they are, okay, and then, okay, how are we going to go about measuring this? So you end up taking the technology piece, building that component to where you're able to pull that data and give you the visuals that you need to be able to make your decisions on a month-by-month basis, on a quarterly basis, however frequently that you're making kind of those higher level decisions to be able to push the business forward.
I hope you've been enjoying this Good Success podcast, and we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Our next sponsor is Gary Harper at Sharper Business Solutions. Your business is a personal endeavor that you have poured your blood, sweat, and tears into, and they know that. Sharper Business Solutions is a full-service solution to help you scale your dream. Sharper Business Solution implements the Sharper process and other key systems, giving you the confidence that you need to have freedom and grow and scale your business. The Sharper team wants to come right alongside you and provide the resources needed for long-term growth and success. If you are looking to grow or scale your business, contact my friend and Good Success Mastermind member, Gary Harper, and his team to help you implement the Sharper process. You can schedule your free consultation today at sharperprocess.com. So go do it right now. Go to sharperprocess.com and schedule your free consultation with Gary and his team. Our next sponsor is Jerry Padilla from Prime Lending. Whether it's your first time buying a home or you're well adversed in the process, buying and refinancing a home can be an exciting and rewarding but sometimes challenging experience. At Prime Lending, we take the time to listen and work with you to find a home loan that fits your needs. If you're looking to refinance your loan, lower your interest rate, lower your monthly payments, shorten your term, or get cash for whatever reason you need, we have a solution for you. Prime Lending also has several options for renovation loans, so you can find what works best for you and your home project. Make sure you contact our good friend, Jerry Padilla, who is a senior loan officer and originator with Prime Lending and has over 11 years in the mortgage industry. You can learn more about Jerry and what Prime Lending has to offer you by visiting goodsuccess.com/prime lending. Again, that's goodsuccess.com/prime lending. And now, back to our show.
I think that's incredible because you even said it yourself. I mean, sometimes you'll sit in a seminar or somebody giving a keynote speech and they talk about something and you know, you got these visionaries in the room, whether it is about finances or some marketing or something like that. And they're like, that sounds great, but what do I do with that? Like, I have no clue. So then they don't even act on it because they don't know what to do with it. So you're saying that the fractional CFO comes in and it's not just a bookkeeper. It's not just somebody that scans your receipts in and logs that into QuickBooks. It's somebody that actually comes in and analyzes the business and kind of what your finances look like. And so you dive a little bit deeper into that. So ultimately, I feel like that is worth much more than, I mean, almost anything. Because if your finances is what your business is all about. So you got to start with that and really think about that. So the fractional CFO dives deeper into just being a bookkeeper, basically. So.
Sure, and when we get brought in, and it may be, you mentioned kind of at that granular level, that kind of all the kind of the back end process of getting to those numbers. Sometimes that does need to be overhauled, and so there is a value that can be brought as far as coming in and doing staff training, which sometimes does get done on that bookkeeping end. But you're right, Josh. That isn't the ultimate purpose. The ultimate purpose is let's get that shored up so we can get the numbers to where they need to be, so we can take those numbers, generate the visuals based on the metrics that you're wanting to measure, and then we can have a conversation of what do those mean, and then what needs to be done as far as to push the business forward.
So somebody that's listening probably already knows if they need this or not, but for those who aren't really listening that hardcore or whatever, who is this for? Like, who needs this type of service as a fractional CFO? Because I mean, we come across it. I'm sure you come across it more than anybody. You got these business owners that are doing their own books, so they've got stacks of receipts and just like, you know, all kinds of papers on their desk that need to be scanned in and that kind of thing. So is that the type of person that needs something like this? I mean, what somebody that's listening, who needs this?
Well, in regards to the fractional CFO, generally it would be a business, hopefully that's kind of well beyond that.
Sure.
Those are processes that that really you don't necessarily need a fractional CFO to work with. Hopefully your accountant can help you with, that process of, where do we go about, as far as keeping our receipts and kind of that end of things. The fractional CFO, and most of the time when a business hits right around that $500,000 mark as it relates to net revenue. When I say net revenue, basically it's your top line revenue kind of less your cost of goods sold. So if you're in real estate, for example, that it would be your gross amount, your top line number as far as what you sold your properties for, less what you bought the properties for, less rehab, those direct in cost in the property. So once you get to that net revenue prior to your admin cost, usually the value comes, the greatest value comes when those businesses hit that right around that $500,000 mark. Because if you're below that, it's still pretty much a small business that many times can't either see the value or basically can't afford somebody at that level to come in to be able to provide that. So many times you just kind of need to work through the kind of the day-to-day, get that piece of it figured out, kind of the bottom line. And most of the time, those businesses need more of the process help than they do a fractional CFO help. So most of the time for them, it's just like figuring out their processes, the best way to make their businesses efficient, as efficient as possible. And of course, there is an industry out there that provides those services as far as on the process end. And so get the process end figured out, work through that traction process, and then get your people where they need to be. And then once that's all established, and then that's where a fractional CFO can come in and bring the most amount of value.
Sure. I think if you get to the point where you don't think you need one, then you probably need one more than you think you need one. But I think the question I have is, so if you go into to a bunch of different people and doing tax returns and helping people with their books and kind of overseeing a lot of different real estate investors across the country, what are you seeing as people's biggest mistakes, or what are you seeing as people's biggest opportunities? So where are people really doing really well in, and what are things that you're seeing are like mistakes of people from this perspective?
Okay. Well, the top two reasons businesses fail, and of course we know most small businesses 90% plus fail in the first 5 years. Okay, and the top two reasons why businesses fail, number one is usually lack of experience of the owner. Okay, of the visionary.
Industry or the actual the finances?
In general. No, I'm saying lack of experience in finances. Sure. I think lack of experience in just general, running a business.
Anything, yeah.
Okay, so they just simply get into a business. They may have a phenomenal idea. Okay, so they once again going back earlier as far as they may have a phenomenal product, for example, that they want to take to market, but they have no idea how to operate a business. And or they have a phenomenal process. Maybe they have a passion for people, but they have no idea how to run a business. So that lack of experience kind of bites them in the rear end, so to speak. And so, but that's usually number one. So they have the passion there, but they don't have the knowledge that's there to be able to run the day to day. That's why many times a small business owner needs to get into some sort of a group where they can get those helps. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is cash flow. And so number two reason why business fail, which is pretty close to number one, is just simply not managing their cash flow. So a business may come in and they may be making $500,000 a year, but they have no idea where the money went. And so a fractional CFO, and sometimes an accountant can provide a report. Well, here's where your money went, but they can't really explain to the business owner this is where your money went, because many times you look at financial statements and you have the depreciation, you have amortization, you have these things that aren't real. Okay, so if I go through and I buy one of these, okay, I can see this. I spent my money on this microphone. Okay, I spent money on this studio, whatever the case may be. So those are kind of hard costs that can be identified. But if you're buying something and it's being depreciated, or even worse, it's being amortized, interest, for example. Okay, you can see a number on there, but you're kind of figuring out, okay, well, where did my money truly go? And so you get this report, but don't understand, where's my money truly going? And so number two is the cash flow component, not understanding this is the cash flow that's coming in, this is the cash flow that's going out the door. A P&L and a balance sheet don't do that for you. Okay, there is a third, it's called a statement of cash flows, which unfortunately a lot of accountants, especially tax preparers out there, have no idea, have no understanding of what a statement of cash flows is.
We'll explain that.
Okay, so a statement of cash flow basically just shows that this is my net income, and then this is where my money went for financing activities, investing activities, etc. So it's one of those reports that needs to be generated, especially if you're working with bankers, but it's a report that really needs to be taken and explained many times to the owner so they understand that this is where my cash truly went out the door. And so taking those reports and being able to interpret them in a way that's okay, this is where your money is going. And so on as far as on all businesses where they need help with most of the time on the front end is budgeting.
Yeah, so what's the difference between a statement of cash flow and budget?
Okay, so a statement of cash flow, and I don't necessarily, maybe when this thing gets posted, maybe I'll post a link under there as far as maybe a visual of what this looks like. But a statement of cash flows, you can just Google it, statement of cash flows, and it'll pull up 100 different,
How about you send
visual.
us a PDF, and then if you guys want that PDF, email Josh your email.
Sure. My email, jbelk, JBLK, at belkassociatesllc.com. And I'll be more than happy to get you any information that you'd like, as it relates to this especially. But a statement of cash flows, all it does is starts from your basically your net income, and it shows these different areas that your cash went out the door. A budget does not do that. A budget says this is where I want my money to go, and so.
I'm sorry. So let me clarify. So if you have a budget and you're reviewing it every single month, you know exactly what line item, where all the money was spent.
Correct.
What's the difference between that and the cash flow?
Okay. So with your budget, if it's done correctly, okay, a budget is going to outline and say this is where we want our cash to go, and then you do a comparison to it. This is where our cash actually went.
Right.
Okay. So a statement of cash flows is a formal accounting term.
Sure.
Okay. And so it basically just rolls everything up into these real high level areas. And so it basically recaptures in unrealized depreciation. It brings back in costs that have been amortized. It brings back in money that was spent that you don't see on the P&L, okay, that you only see on the balance sheet side, and it kind of brings everything together. But it's really, the report generally is, most of the time, is less than 20 lines. And so it doesn't really bring a whole lot there, where a budget gives you the visual of, okay, this is where we're wanting our money to go. And then you have your actual side, which is where our money actually went. And so that's all great and good, but being able to take the next step of, okay, well, how do I read this? How do I interpret this? And so how can I take this, and am I able to identify maybe areas that I am being inefficient, areas that need to be shored up? And then there's also a great deal of confusion, especially in the real estate space, of developing budgets as it relates to on the property end versus on the admin end. So you can end up with these on a project level, on a property level, a budget for each property, and then you have the budget for your admin side. How does that all come in together, and how does it relate together? And then for many times visionaries, they just get overwhelmed by that process. So to be able to come in and simplify that, and especially working with the team and saying, okay, this is how you need to pull all this together, so you can have a good conversation with your visionary, and being able to explain exactly what is going on in the business, and then we're there to be able to come behind them and provide that next level of value.
Yeah, we found that it's almost better to keep those budgets separate. So have your own admin budget, and then have a project budget for every single property or every single project. And then, like, at the end, you're reviewing every project budget, and then monthly report and review the monthly budgets.
Exactly. So budgets. At your budget end, you have your net income on your budget on your property end, which essentially becomes your top line revenue on your budget for your admin side. You can kind of picture the visual there.
Interesting.
And for real estate, it's complicated because, we don't want to pay taxes. Right? Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to pay taxes. So, like, sometimes you don't think that you're making money because you have depreciation, but there's actual cash there.
Right.
And vice versa. You could also have the other issue where you're not losing money, but there's not cash there either because you're over in projects. And it's a very complicated, I almost like talk about, it's like a cube. Like, your financial situation for a real estate operator is like a cube. It's not like just, like I said, most businesses, if I just bought and sold a trinket, for instance, it's like I can see everything on probably 2 pieces of paper. I can see a balance sheet, and I can see my P&L, and maybe a cash flow statement, I guess, or maybe something else to kind of just, maybe a budget or whatever. But like with a real estate business, you own rentals, you have, maybe for me, I'm loaning money out, I'm loaning money in. So you have like that component, you have balance sheet side, you've got cash flow. For me, something we track every single week on every single business that we have is our is our cash on hand for every single business, just to kind of know if everything's out right now, where do we stand? So it's not an easy thing to go through. So just make sure that you understand that, and that's just kind of why you need somebody else to kind of look over your shoulders and show you where those biggest opportunities might be to make change, and where you're lacking and kind of what you need. So you said the biggest ways that people fail are because lack of experience and cash, which I totally agree with both of those. And I was actually just with a meeting yesterday with a guy trying to, telling me that he was thinking about going on his own. And sometimes I'm like, it's not always the best thing for people. Sometimes they need that extra time working with somebody and learning these other pieces of business to be able to really be successful and scale when how they want to scale, and understanding how it all works together. But what are the financially? So financially tracking and financially, where do you think people's biggest weaknesses are then? So you talked about like the actual business itself, what they fail and that, but
yes.
Like actually bookkeeping wise, or what are people not doing, or people not doing the cash flow or cash flow statements, or people getting over leverage? Like what are mistakes people are making that you're seeing in real estate?
Planning, which I think is true in any business, and planning is multifaceted. And I'll kind of hit on a couple of these. First is planning for saving. Okay, so there is a kind of a real trend. Even in the room I was at last week, there was a kind of a conversation on kind of this profit first, which is a philosophy. It's not a bookkeeping principle. Yeah. So the beauty of that is it helps business owners, and whether or not you're a fan of it or not, you may not even read the book or know what I'm talking about. It's a basic Google search will kind of give it to you. But what I do like about it is it helps business owners provide a plan. So every time that they go through, and Tom, I'll kind of speak to what you were talking about here. So you have this budget, and then you have on a project level. So whether it's real estate, whether it's on a lending deal, regardless of what it is, a JV deal, whatever it is you may that you may be doing, when you get your cash back on that. Okay, whether it's month over month, maybe it's a JV deal or a loan deal, you're gonna get your money back in 90 days or 120 days, whatever it is. When you get that money back, when you get your net income on there, planning on what to do with that. Some people, they take that top line revenue and they're immediately saying, okay, I'm going to maximize my admin cost, and I want to take that money and I want to redeploy it right away. So they take all of their profits and they immediately redeploy it. So not only just paying for their overhead, for their admin cost, but immediately want to redeploy it into another project. So in the real estate space specifically, I see this over and over and over again, because real estate investors, it's all about, for many of them, it's like they just no greater joy.
They're hunting.
Okay, yeah.
They're hunting.
I was on a Zoom call yesterday, and the lady that works in their office, like, she was a few minutes into the call, she comes in. She may actually hear this, and she'll know who I'm talking about. But she's like the most enthusiastic person I think I've talked to in recent days. But she comes in just fired up because they just secured some more deals. And they just found a couple more deals. They sold a couple properties, and it was all about that. You mentioned the word hunt, but it's all about the excitement of finding that next deal, and that's all great and good. But the problem is, if you take all of your net profits and you redeploy all of it, and you've done no planning, you're going to get yourself to the to the time where you're going to have to pay taxes. Because if you have active income, you're going to pay taxes. Sure. The way if you want to avoid taxation, do everything through self-directed, and that type of thing. But if you have an actual like day-to-day business where you're profiting money, and you can do things to minimize that, but in all probability, you are going to have some tax exposure. But it's planning for that. So number one, planning for savings. So taking some of that and saying, you know what, there may be a downturn in the market, and maybe I want some cash there to be able to deploy when everybody else is selling. I want to be there buying. Okay, or just saving for kind of a rainy day. Mm-hmm. So there may be a dry spell in the business where it's taking us a longer period of time to sell properties because the market slowed down a little bit. So I need to make sure I have 30, 60, 90 days of cash on hand to be able to carry me through. So that's number one. Otherwise, they end up either, trying to get an unsecured line of credit, which has cost them, 20% interest, whatever, it just gets ridiculous. Or they just end up having to close their doors because they don't have the cash flow there. All their money is tied up on all these projects that they can't pull their money out. So number one is planning for savings. Number two is...
Before you go into that real quick, you mentioned profit first. I mean, have you read that yet?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. We actually have a client that reached out to us. Hey, are you familiar with this philosophy? And it is much tougher to implement. Overall, the real estate space is a much tougher area as far as for account. It's amazing the number of potential clients that call our office. We take a look at their thing, and it's obvious that the accountant, and they may be perfectly, they may be licensed, they may be CPAs, EAs, whatever, but they don't understand real estate, and I look at it as this thing is a disaster. Okay, as far as what they've been provided, the tax return just isn't correct. Okay, they just don't understand the business. But as it relates to profit first, it's even more complicated. Okay, because profit first is real easy in a business that's a service business, or they're kind of a grocery store or whatever the case may be. Those types of businesses are much easier. I'm buying a product, I'm turning around and selling a product, or I'm providing a service. Okay, I pretty much know what my hard costs are. But when you're doing profit first, okay, it ends up actually, just like we talked earlier, you end up with these multiple budgets. The same thing is true with profit first.
They have 5, I think, or something.
Yeah, you have 5 bank accounts and all that. Right. Okay, but what I mean there is you end up with your basically doing your project budget, but you're doing your profit first on your admin side. Got it. So when you get to your net revenue, that is when before you pay your admin costs, that's where you're doing your profit first analysis, not from the top line end. So when you get to that net revenue after you've gone through and you've sold a property, or with your net real estate rental income for that particular month, that's when you're going to implement your profit first. Got it. And so from there, you're going to go through and say, okay, from that, I'm going to go ahead and deploy it into these different buckets, which essentially is savings, tax, profit, etc.
Well, so you mentioned one end of the spectrum, and I totally agree with you. Like, I've seen this all the time, where people just don't have any cash because they've redeployed every penny that they possibly just made in profit into the next project or whatever the case is. But on the flip side, I've also seen the exact opposite. So as soon as they get that $30,000 check, the other mistake that at least I see, maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, maybe this is just my perception, is that they take all that money and then it's theirs. So It's like there has to be this constant balance between the two. And what I have found, and maybe I'm not right, but what I found is to just pay yourself the right, correct salary that you need, and just roll that into your admin budgets and roll that into making sure that everything is working. But you kind of have to know what that looks like. What is your ground zero? What makes you zero? If you can figure out, like, if you can pay yourself a healthy salary and still make zero, then you may not have had like the successful year that you wanted to have, but at least like you're where you need to be from a profit first perspective.
Is that the difference between somebody that wants to build a business and just fund a lifestyle?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but I'm just telling you from a larger business perspective, there has to be this balance. You can't just take all the money
in the business,
but you can't just put it all in the business either.
Right.
You have to be able to take care of yourself personally and be able to take care of the business long term.
Sure.
Right, so, and then there's a philosophy component there. So, and Tom, you're spot on in regards to if you own a business, taking a salary, okay, because you're right. A lot of times business owners go through and they want to pull all the cash out of it, and they want to fund a certain lifestyle.
Sure.
And if that's the why of your business, in all probability, your business is not going to sustain itself. You've got to have a purpose and a why that's much bigger than you. Otherwise, it creates cultural issues, that type of thing, and that's a whole other conversation. But ideally, you're going to want to establish, okay, this is what I need as far as to be able to fund my own personal needs. Okay, and do that analysis. So when we talk about budgeting, we're stepping into the realm of personal finances here. And I do have this conversation with Josh. You and I may have even had this conversation. Like, kind of sit down and okay, what do I need month over month? I own my own personal bills. And look at you, Josh. Tom, look at you, Tom. And you guys are both very frugal in your own personal lifestyles. And most business owners have whys larger than themselves. Their goal isn't to go and buy a 6,000 square foot house or buy a $100,000 sports car. Okay, their why is really, a bigger part of their purpose is to invest in their community or invest in ministry work, whatever the case may be. And I know that's true for both of you guys. There's a bigger reason there. But understanding this is what I need to essentially support my lifestyle. Okay, and you build your salary around that. And of course, you're also going to look at comparable salaries, those pieces that need to be there. So that's going to be part of your admin cost is your salary. But beyond that, you're going to have the profit first, which is the portion that you can choose to redeploy. Now, what happens, Tom, when what you're talking about there, you're right. Instead of taking that money and redeploying it, reinvesting it, whether it's inside the business, so you're investing in people, processes, or your property. Investing something in the business, try to push the business forward. So you can do that with the profit, or you can take it and you can redeploy it into other areas. So you may lend with it, you may buy another piece of property, whatever the case may be. But that's already built. That's built in there. And so that profit first end, that profit piece is the piece that you can let sit for a while. And your savings, of course, is going to get built. Your taxes are there. So when it comes to pay your taxes, okay, the bucket is there, and then thirdly is the actual profit end that you can choose to do something else with if you so choose. So the discipline of that particular philosophy is that where you're putting things into other buckets to be able to utilize to make sure that the savings is there to fund the business in case you do have a slow season. The tax money is there to be able to address my tax exposure, and then there is a profit component there that I can choose to reinvest at some point in the future if I so choose to do so.
So we talked about the problems, we've talked about things that people don't do that are right. So what are some of the biggest opportunities though that you see that maybe people aren't taking advantage of in their own business, or that they maybe are taking advantage of that you're seeing?
Well,
from a again, like sometimes when you look at numbers, I think the 80-20 principle basically proves that like top 20% of your customers are the only customers that you really want anyways. But like if you think about it, I think a lot of times you can see that really quickly in a financial statement if it's prepared correctly and you understand what the financials are saying.
Right. Well, that's a really broad question, but I can try to maybe hit in some areas, and sometimes it's not necessarily what the numbers aren't telling you. It goes beyond sometimes to those intangibles. So when you talk about what are we doing in our business, you really a lot of times you need to look at process and you look at your people, and so many times people when a business owner is selfish, and you can tell that by looking at their financials, their business is not going to succeed because they have a culture of the business owner is in it all for themselves, and regardless of who they bring in. They can bring in all the consultants, they can bring in fractional CFOs, they can bring whomever into the business, help me with this, but their sole goal is that of being selfish, and they don't want to invest in their people, they don't want to invest in their processes, they don't want to invest in the business itself. That business is not going to succeed. So part of that profit, part of the that needs to be built into that business is making sure that you're investing in the people. So many times businesses struggle as far as trying to find the right people, and then once they get the people on board, making sure that they have the culture there, that the people align with that culture, and that they're also developing the people to be able to be the best employees they can in that particular business. And so that's many times a huge component. If the business owner is a hustler, they're out there and they're or they have a team there that think of real estate, they're finding the deals, they're doing all these types of things. Those are the easiest businesses to work with, provided the owner themselves can get out of their own way, and be willing to delegate, be willing to invest in their people, invest in their culture. That business will succeed.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely appreciate you sharing all that. We could sit here all day and talk about things that business owners are doing wrong, doing right, and I'm sure you've seen all of it. So maybe we'll dedicate an entire episode to that. Or you could just talk about it on your podcast and just share it with everybody else.
Investing in development is huge. In yourself, constantly be learning. I know for both of you guys, and I think you guys are both more of a listening type of a person, as far as you're on Audible, whatever, listening to books, and I see that in your guys, on your Facebook posts and conversations we've had. I'm not. I can't sit there and
I got that from him.
Yeah. So as far as I'm not a good person at listening because my mind wanders. Sure. I have to be focused, so I'm more of kind of a reading, but constantly be reading books that are to help you, help your business. And then it seemed even yesterday, I have clients in my office and I'm constantly just giving them books. Hey, you need to read this. I think the book Traction, I think I give one of those away a week. in my office and give it to them and say, okay, it's not something you can self-implement very well, but something at least to give you the exposure on understanding where people need to be. But constantly investing in yourself, investing in your people, that development piece is huge. So a lot of times when you talk about the fractional CFO, they're going to come in and that should be one thing they talk about, not just the numbers, but getting beyond the numbers and say, okay, well, what are we doing with this? What is your plan as far as developing yourself, developing your employees to be able to push your business forward?
Awesome. Well, we thank you very much for sharing everything you have. We're going to have to start wrapping this up, though.
Okay.
We got 2 more questions that we ask every person, but you've already answered them a couple times.
Okay.
But maybe I don't know if your answer changes, but it'd be good to hear.
Well, I don't
again.
remember how I answered it the last time, so okay, we'll
even
see.
if it's the same thing, then somebody's got to hear something 7 times.
Shoes I wore yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. So Good Success, you know us very well. You've been around us very much. You know Tom very well. You know me very well. You've been a part of our mastermind since the second event that we had. Spoke at the Community Go-Giver event last year. So you're saturated with Good Success, right? So when it comes to Good Success, what comes to mind? What does that mean to you? That term, maybe not the specific group of people, but the term Good Success. What does that mean to you?
Well, when we talk about good success, then I think I'm on a business end. Am I bringing value to my clientele base? Am I growing along with am I seeing the development in myself and the development in my clients as well? Am I able to help push them forward? And we talk about success on the business end. Am I accomplishing that? On a personal end, am I keeping my priorities where they need to be? Am I developing my family? And so and all of us have that responsibility. If you're a mom, you're a dad in that household, the commitment to each other. So the commitment to your spouse, commitment to your children, is that grounded? And am I improving in those areas as well? So when I talk about good success, am I able to look back on a quarter by quarter basis? Am I able to look back on a year over year basis and saying, you know what, I've made steps, I've made improvements in my business. Why has the Lord placed me on this earth? Why was I created? And am I getting closer to where I need to be, both as an individual, both as a business owner, to achieving the purpose of why the Lord created me and why I'm here on this planet?
That's incredible. Love that.
Awesome.
And then you got to leave the audience with one thing. So one thing only, whether it's a book. You've mentioned a lot of nuggets in here, but maybe it's a book you've read you want to share. Maybe it's a piece of advice, a thought, a quote, whatever it is. One thing you got to leave the audience with. What would that be?
Okay, I just finished reading the book, and correct me on the title. The book on Solomon, the richest man who ever lived.
Yeah.
I just finished that book, and Tom, you sent it to me, and got it. You sent it just a few weeks ago, and I know it had been mentioned a few times before, and I just finished it up actually on the plane back from Orlando this last week. And what a powerful book. I finished reading it. I turned around and gave it to my son. He's on his senior trip this week, and I gave it to him, and I want him to read it. And he actually did start reading it. But that's a book that you've got to get your hands on as far as biblical principles, but they're just life principles in being able to take what we find in the book of Proverbs and Scripture and to be able to apply it to business and to life. It's really just transformational. It's a phenomenal book.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you guys, like, I've replaced my number one book that I recommend to everybody, which used to be The Go-Giver. I still love The Go-Giver. I think everybody should still read The Go-Giver, but my number one book recommendation for anybody is The Richest Man That Ever Lived.
100%. I'm the same way too, and I got that. He recommended it, and I don't know how long it's been out there and been published, but I
have
feel
no
like
idea.
it's just now surfaced.
It's not a very popular book.
Yeah,
it's not on Audible, but I promise you, it's transformational.
And it's an easy read.
Oh, it is.
It's not complicated at all. Very practical.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Stuff you can
definitely
do today.
Yes.
Like you don't have to go through this whole, having a consultant come in and implement it or whatever.
Right.
But awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for being on the show today, Josh. Thank you for coming into the actual studio.
Yes, awesome.
If somebody wanted to get in contact with you, what would be the best way to do that? Website, Facebook, email address, whatever way. How could they make that
Sure.
happen?
I gave my email address earlier, jbelk at belkassociatesllc.com. My office phone number, 219-365-9520. You can always find me on Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm on those platforms. Pretty easy to find.
Awesome. And then make sure you guys go check out his new podcast, Belk on Business. It's on all podcast platforms. So make sure you check that out. You got 5-6 episodes, something like that.
Yeah, 7.
Right
I think
now.
we're at 7 now.
Yeah. So awesome stuff. I believe that comes out weekly.
On Mondays. Yeah, I put them out on Mondays. Yep.
Awesome stuff. So make sure you guys go check that out, Belk on Business. So Josh, thank you for being on the show. We look forward to having you back again soon.
Love it. Thanks. Glad I could be here.
All right, so that's going to do it for today's episode. We appreciate you jumping on and joining us today. If you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the Good Success Podcast. We're on all podcast platforms, or just go download the official Good Success app on either the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store for Android. And then if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review. We would much appreciate that. We would love to hear your thoughts on it. Tom's got the app pulled up right there.
Awesome.
You can just go search Josh Belk, and you'll find all 3 podcast episodes that have been on there. So it's incredibly easy. So make it happen. And then the Good Success Mastermind, like we mentioned, Josh is a part of that. Josh is going to be in Miami. I'm not sure when this podcast exactly is going to be airing, but it's either going to be really close to the Miami Mastermind or it's going to be afterwards. So if you guys want to learn more about the next coming events in August and November, go to goodsuccess.com/mastermind to learn more about it. Fill out the application there, and then you'll get on a phone call with Tom and talk about it, and hopefully we'll see you at the next event. And then the Community Go-Giver event tickets are going to sell out at 80 seats, so make sure you go pick those up. It's happening right here in the office in Gary, Indiana, June 26, 27, 28. CommunityGoGiver.com is where you can pick your tickets up today. There's 1 ticket and then a 2-ticket package that's dirt cheap. Like, it's incredibly cheap for a seminar, this 3-day seminar that you're going to be getting. With incredible speakers that are going to be there. So if you're not following us on our social platforms, make sure you are so you can see the announcements of the actual speakers that are going to be there and what they're talking about. So that's going to do it for today's episode. We appreciate you jumping on and joining us today. Remember to be a conduit, not a bucket.
Work to have to give.
And we'll catch you guys on the next one.